Good morning, everybody. So, welcome to the next session in the Peppy project. And today we are looking at the holistic approach to debt advice and debt counselling that MABS takes in Ireland. My name is Gwen Harris, and I am the regional manager in North Dublin MABS. So, the money advice and budgeting service in Ireland, and just to give it a forward here, that we would call it money advice, which is a combination of both debt advice through our helpline and through our offices, but also debt counselling through representation in our offices as well. So today I will discuss the objectives of MABS, the money advice process, and the 8 R's process that of income maximization that we would take with clients. And again, just to explain, in MABS, we would call service users clients. So the objectives of the MAB service support our holistic approach to debt advice and debt counselling, or as I mentioned, we call it money advice. We work with our clients not just to achieve a debt solution, but in other ways such as prevention, representation to not just achieve a debt solution, but perhaps to access an entitlement of tax or of social welfare. So there are a number of objectives of MABS that help us to achieve our holistic approach. So first of all, our primary objective is to deliver one-to-one advice to people having difficulty in managing their money. So those who are in debt now, currently working with problem debt, trying to pay off problem debt, or people who feel that they are in danger of becoming indebted or having difficulties in payments later in life or later in the month. So our working with one-to-one clients is not just always dealing with people who currently have a debt. Sometimes it is in perhaps budgeting skills before somebody moves out of home, or budgeting skills if somebody wishes to save so that they do not have to borrow for a life event, maybe such as Christmas or religious occasions. So we work also in partnership, and our first partnership is with statutory agencies, voluntary agencies, other service providers, and support groups in our communities, which helps us to provide an integrated system of supports that can be accessed in our communities by our target group as appropriate to their needs. And what this really helps us do is to that MAVs would keep our boundaries where we work with people in the debt advice or the money advice section of their difficulties or money advice approach. And then we work with other agencies who will support them in other difficulties that they may be having. And we may sometimes refer to health professionals, to counselling, to legal advice, because MABS does not provide legal advice. So we would be a gateway to accessing legal advice, or in some cases to access the statutory solutions of insolvency through a personal practitioner. So it's very important for us to have some really good systems of referral, which very often we have a protocol or liaison agreement for these systems, and that enables us all to keep our boundaries. But we also, in partnership, work with our clients. When we work on one-to-one, we work in a capacity-based money advice process or partnership money advice process. And what this allows us to do is to meet the client where they need us to meet them. So what I mean for that is we may have somebody who approaches MABS today who may be very well able to contact their creditors in normal circumstances, but perhaps they have experienced a bereavement, and this has reduced their ability to maybe just deal with their financial situation. They may not know where to go, and what we would do then is perhaps we might meet them where we do more work for them than they might usually have to ask us to do. And then over time, we would hope that their capacity would increase, and then they would become self-empowered and have regained control of their own personal situation. But then we would work with other people who may have a long-term reduced capacity due to numeracy or literacy or other perhaps mental or intellectual capacity issues. And in certain circumstances, people may need us to do more work for them. And what that might entail is we might represent them in all cases to all their creditors. And the support that we may need to provide there would be at a pace suitable to a person's need. And it may be more longer term for people who have a long-term reduced capacity. Further objectives of MABS that we help us to achieve our holistic approach is the community development, where we facilitate the target group or our communities to be involved in the planning and the implementation of our services locally. And how we do this is through feedback. We have feedback from our helpline, from our case working, and from our website. And what we're looking at here is, does our material, do our service supports, do the language that we use in our processes, is this helpful? Is it maybe causing barriers for people? Is it confusing? And this is an important piece also to help the holistic approach, which is to increase people's confidence in general. And our service delivery, we need to be informed by our users. Are we achieving our goals? We also deliver money management education, and we have a statutory responsibility for the development of education in all things money management. And we deliver education in our communities, maybe with parents groups, with in schools. We've just recently been involved in the Global Money Week in all our communities. And what we're doing throughout our money management education is budgeting advice, maybe helping people to know the questions that they should ask to pick the correct financial product before they start out on their journey, financial journey. So maybe we might be discussing that with students, with new workers, people new to the workforce again, before they have opportunity to access financial products. And we would work with other agencies on this as well, such as Citizens Information, who would educate people and give information on tax and social welfare entitlements, but also then the Competition and Consumer Protection Commission of Ireland, who would they're a free government site that and government service that deliver education on financial products. But also in our money management education, we're doing this throughout our process with a one-to-one with our clients. And as I've mentioned, we work on a capacity based, dependent on the person that we're working with and what their capacity is. And we do hope to increase their capacity and their confidence over time. And plus, as a plus from increasing financial confidence and financial confidence is increasing financial and social and personal well-being. And finally, we work on policy change, and this helps close out our holistic approach in that we try to report on the lived experience and the unintended consequences at times of national policy or social policy, which would include maybe tax or social welfare access or other financial contracts, loans, access to credit, and so on. And by doing this, we do try to maybe influence change in the future generations or in the future difficulties that people might present with. So why do we have these objectives? In 2007, the Council of Europe stated that there's a number of steps that each country should take to address over-indebtedness, and proposed a three-step policy measures in this regard. And MABS objectives are set to achieve these. Although our objectives were set back in the 90s, we feel that we definitely support the Council of Europe's recommendations. So the first objective is in preventative measures, and this is about financial literacy, budgeting, money management, and information for borrowers. So here we do this through our client work and one-to-one through our community money management education and information sessions. And also on our website, we have a lot of information, particularly around debt prevention before you borrow, how to budget, how to read maybe a fuel bill, how to read a wage slip. So the second measure is the remedial or curative one. And this is where we work to resolve the current debt problems by protecting earnings, and we use our reasonable living expenses, which are set out in the Personal Solvency Act in Ireland of 2012. And these are a set agreed uh, household income that is protected, that is relevant to the size of the household, to the age of the children. And while this is not, we don't have to work 100% never going outside of the reasonable living expenses. It helps to work as a guide to ensure that people have protected income that helps provide for their essentials and their quality of life in their household. While also protecting this income, we work to achieve realistic and sustainable uh, payment plans, either through statutory insolvency access or voluntary, non-statutory, out-of-court arrangements that we can secure with creditors. And finally, the rehabilitative measures, as recommended by the Council of Europe, look at helping people to rejoin society in the Fresh Start, in write-offs. And we achieve this either through statutory solutions or through some some voluntary arrangements that we have with creditors through our protocols. So the money advice process, we have a number of guiding principles or ethos in MABS, and this is how we have devised our money advice process to achieve these that are in our mission statement. So we're client-centered, non-judgmental, and impartial. And here we work to protect the client through protected income levels, through protected spending, and to ensure that they have access to all of their rights and entitlements. We work in a non-judgmental way with every client. And as I've mentioned, we work to empower people to regain control, to be able to maintain their future or to maybe retain control of their financial difficulties in the future. Rights-based, making sure that people have access to all of their rights and entitlements, which includes not just income, but also access to justice, access to insolvency, and access to the fair treatment under codes of practice. It's very important for our reputation and responsibility, or our reputation and relationships with the industry, that we remain professional and honest at all times. We're educative, again, coming back to the empowerment perspective, to help achieve sustainable solutions and affordable plans for our clients. Credible, very much important that we are seen as an honest broker, but also a service of, I suppose, a realistic expectations and realistic asks of the creditor industry and of the government. And yes, there you go, the realistic piece as well. So our process is built on these principles throughout. So we conduct a 6-step money advice process with all of our clients, and everybody is afforded this process. And some people may finish the process quite quickly, depending on their debt. It may be just one debt, and it may be quite quick to resolve, and others may take some time depending on the complexity of the person's situation, of their household situation, and their creditors that are involved. So the first two are quite linked, where we are researching the situation. We're gathering as much information as we can. But the first thing that we do is we set out our data privacy and our GDPR processes for the clients, so that they know our confidentiality, but also they know our boundaries. Excuse me. Sorry. And then and in the first and the second stage, we're gathering information. And sometimes, and if I refer back to the capacity-based approach that we would take, sometimes when we're gathering information, we might be working with somebody who comes in very prepared, has all their bank statements, has all their debts, have all their expenses, and that expedition, that fact finding is quite quick. Whereas for other people, they may not be able to gather the information themselves. They may have literacy issues. They may not have retained any letters or communication that they got due to fear or embarrassment or panic or otherwise. So we might have between phase one and phase two, or stage one and stage two here, um, we have different levels of work depending on where that person needs us to be. But either way, we are gathering and assessing all of the information that is relevant to the future insolvency or future solvency of a person. Like, will this person that I'm working with return to work after an illness, or is it a longer term situation? And that's very relevant, not just the bank statements, income, debts, liabilities, all of these pieces of information are as important as each other. And this helps us develop, first of all, the budget. And we work the budget with the client as much as possible to ensure that it is reflective of their household and their household needs. We discussed then all options based on this information that we've gathered to support people to draw up a financial statement. And the difference between a budget and a financial statement for us is that the budget is the working household expenses. It's what's coming in and what's going out, what's coming in and what needs to be paid. The financial statement is the plan for a creditor. This is the what's going into a household, what's been spent out of a household, and what's affordable to repay in arrears or to repay a debt that is outstanding. And we help, we either, in this case as well as with all the other stages, it is capacity based. So for some people here, they may we may help them with the financial statement and they may go and negotiate with their creditor based on that. Or for others, and in general, this would be when we're working with people for the first time, they would ask for us to contact their creditors because they feel fear of their creditor, that they don't feel as strong as their creditor. They feel ashamed or nervous, and all of these very understandable fears and anxieties. So then in phase four, or stage four for us, we work then to implement this strategy. And the strategy is the difference is the budget, is the financial statement and the plan. And we help them put it in place. And if there are difficulties in achieving the solution voluntarily or by statute, we would then work to help with any appeals, to maybe help refer people on to legal advice or to a personal insolvency practitioner or other services that they may need if the first solution put forward is not acceptable. And finally, we review and close. And this, as I mentioned, the stages where we are providing life skills and tools to ensure that these arrangements that people have put forward are sustainable. We're working all the way through each step with a client. We're helping, if you think about helping to somebody to design their budget, we are helping provide life skills there on the decision of a luxury and an essential of spending, on how to maybe shop around for cheaper financial products, to shop around for cheaper gas or electricity or mobile phone. But then in the reviews and close stage, we are working to reinforce that the offers have been accepted and to reinforce these skills that people have learned and to build their confidence. And we try to work in an advantage thinking setting with clients that we are saying that while we are the professionals, they have skills that can help them to regain and to continue to sustain their new budget. But also we are encouraging people to return to us if they need to, and to not feel shamed to if they have to return, if they feel that the budget is not sustainable, or if they have hit another difficulty in their life. It's very important that we're encouraging people to return to us if they feel something is going to go wrong or has gone wrong, and to not feel embarrassed about contacting us for a second time or third or fourth. So the 8 R's of income maximization. Income maximization, I don't know how well the word translates, but for us, it is a way of looking at the income in the household and how can we help people to make decisions on making their money go further. So first of all, we help rectify the figures. When somebody comes in, maybe they may have numeracy issues. They may not be able to bring the figures together. And what we would help to do here is to set out, okay, this is the budget, this is your income, this is your outgoings. We might encourage people to add to their outgoings in some cases, particularly around personal expenses. And then so that's the first picture. It is a draft. This is what you're saying today is your expense, is your income. So now we move to raising their income through rights and entitlements. And we are a rights-based service, and we're very lucky to have another delivery partner in Ireland called the Citizens Information Services. And they operate similar to the MABS companies, where we have both got national helplines or a national phone service for the citizens' information. But we also have offices located throughout the country of Ireland. And we both have accessible websites. And the citizens' information are the experts in entitlements, in accessing tax and social welfare, and they do a lot of other work for citizens in Ireland. But from the income and rights and entitlements space, we were very lucky that we can work closely with them. And that way, then we reduce down the demand on the MABS resources. But we can access their website, get the most up to date information. When anything changes, we ensure that people know that they might now have a new entitlement. But we do find that many people may not have checked their entitlements. They may have other tax credits they can claim, or other social welfare or income supports, working family income supports from government. So we then work to ensure that people have all their, we encourage people to access, or we help them to access through appeals from our service. Then we look at raising income through other options. Can people return to work? Could people maybe rent a room in their home? These other options that sometimes when people, as you will all know, are in financial difficulty, they may not be able to plan for the future through emotional capacity or distress or panic, where we try to encourage other options that they might have in increasing their income. Also, this could include ensuring that adult children who are living in the family home are paying towards the bills and the rent, which sometimes we find might not be enough money maybe been paid, if any. And then we have the discussion about reducing outgoings. And this is it's core to a budget, as we all know, but it's very personal as well. It could be personal to somebody's family size, household makeup. Do they live rurally? Do they live in a city? Maybe where they are in their mental health, in their emotional health, maybe in their physical health. So there might be certain aspects that they cannot reduce, and actually they might need to increase. But in general, we might be able to talk to people about shopping around for cheaper food prices, cheaper fuel prices between gas and electricity and petrol or diesel, or through other financial products, maybe switching a bank account to a cheaper bank fees. So there's many ways that people can reduce their outgoings. And in some services, we are lucky to have another service in their community groups in our locality that might help with cooking as well. It would not be MA's role to help people with cooking and affordable, healthy cooking, but if people may not have cooking skills and this is impacting their budget, we might be able to make that referral on to another group that we work with. Redirecting expenditure is part of this. As I mentioned, sometimes we do need to ask people or recommend, not ask, but we might need to suggest that people would reduce some outgoings, but also increase others, maybe to increase for some bills because it is more expensive at winter times or otherwise. But then there's other ways that they could reduce some expenses that they could put into savings for the rainy day or redirect it to the repayment of arrears of loans or debts or rent or utilities. The responsibilities. So this is where we would talk about their obligation around, we remind people about their obligation on payments, but also the responsibilities within the household. This might be a discussion where we might have to have in relation to fairness and how people budget as a couple or as a family. And risk assessment is where we would be looking at our resources. You know, if we are helping somebody access, say, a social welfare entitlement, is it something that we need to do in MABS, or do we need to maybe refer to our clients to do themselves, or maybe we refer them to work with another agency. And then finally, reduction or elimination of debts. So this is the end goal when we're working with anybody if they have debts. And perhaps it's the redirection of income, or perhaps this is through the redirection of expenditure, or perhaps it is by way of accessing write-offs through statutory insolvency solutions or through a voluntary solution by a way of arrangement with some of our creditors or the service providers in Ireland. So this would be something that we would also maybe work through when we're doing delivery of community or money management education sessions and helping people to understand the steps of budgeting, because it can be very daunting if you've never budgeted before to help to achieve a sustainable and realistic budget. And I think that that's very much key in, we would find very often that people who come to work with MABS are so anxious to pay their debts that they might decide to not have a social part or social expenses in their budget. And that's not sustainable. It's not good for mental health, not good for emotional health. But also, then we are helping people to make challenging choices themselves on the reducing income outgoings and redirecting expenditure, and maybe having the conversation with a partner or with adult children in the house about responsibilities and raising other income. So when we break down the budgeting process, it can be less overwhelming, less scary, and maybe easier for people to achieve. And when we're working in the capacity-based partnership, there are some that maybe clients might not be able to do, but there are some aspects of this budgeting process that they may be able to do. So the steps may not always be sequential, and this is quite important. We could go through, it might depend on where people are right now. Maybe they have suffered a bereavement or a loss of a job, separation, and then sometimes their abilities and their urgent needs will change how we do this process. So I've mentioned debt solutions. I've mentioned that MABS, obviously the holistic approach, the end game of our holistic approach to debt advice and money advice is that we achieve a debt solution. So there are a number of debt solutions available in Ireland through MABS. Firstly, the voluntary debt solution. And because MABS are in existence since 1992, we have a long history of voluntary or out of court solutions that we achieve with creditors. And through this, we help people to negotiate on their behalf, or we help them to negotiate on their own behalf to achieve an arrangement which is non-voluntary, not statutory, and not legally binding. Since 2012, we have, however, got our insolvency solution access as well. And MABS is a gateway to insolvency. In that means that people can contact MABS to find the best solution for them, or to be redirected to a person of solvency practitioner, or to an approved intermediary in the MAB service to access the statutory solution that is suitable to them. And if anybody is interested in the statutory solutions and their eligibility, you could find it on the insolvency website of Ireland. And finally, a project that is in existence since 2016 is called Awalia. And Awalia is the Irish word for home. And MABS is the gateway to Awalia. Similar to the statutory solutions and voluntary solutions, MABS will work with people to help them access the best supports for them in relation to mortgage arrears. And this is where we would work with other state bodies, such as the Legal Aid Board and the Insolvency Service of Ireland. And the goal of the project is that people would achieve a sustainable solution and an appropriate solution when, if appropriate, to stay and remain in their family home in a mortgage situation. So this is the end of my presentation, and I hope that this has helped you to understand I suppose, the breadth of the MAB service, and how much work that we can do with our clients through the holistic approach, and that our holistic approach is not just in casework, but it's also in our communities and in our social policy to try and influence change for future generations. So thank you very much for your listening.